Welcome to the recording of the April 9th virtual meet of the PCR NMRA Coast Division.
So basically, just wanted to go through a quick update on the convention. Convention's 11 days away. It's Thursday, April 21st to the 24th. So that's basically week after next. It starts on Thursday. So it's 11 days. So it's probably, if you've been thinking about it, it's probably that right time to make a decision about it. I put this chart in because I thought this was for folks who were concerned. I just want to show this because I think it's an interesting data point. So this is Marin County. Their 7-day average, they're not reporting every day. So like the day before this, they had 0 cases. The average is what you want to look at. The 7-day average is 22 cases out of a population of 258,000, which is less than 1 in 10,000 being tested. So, you know, the numbers are really low. If that was a concern, you know, personally, I don't think it's a huge concern anymore. But on the other hand, of course, something to be thinking about. So I guess one of the things is, Frank, you wanted to give a little bit of an update. I've got a list of the clinics here. Do you want to give do you want to give a quick update? I'll stop sharing and let you do a quick update.
Okay, I'll turn my camera on for a minute. I just got off the phone with Denny, and there's 140 registered now, which is significantly more than it was a month ago. And the last day to register online is the 13th. After that, you'll have to do it in person. So that's a big deal. They've added some more clinics. Looks like the main tours and stuff are going to happen. They got enough people. And they don't know yet whether they'll break even or not, but it's going to be close. They're just hoping people, I guess the last time in Rohnert Park, they had a lot of people back out at the last minute, like 10 or 12. So that's a fear that happens again, especially with the COVID stuff. So the night before, Wednesday, they're going to have a no host greeting that Denny and Cliff are sponsoring. And it's free, but if you want alcohol, you have to purchase it. That's the only caveat. So that's the update.
Cool.
Hey,
Yes.
Frank, is there any update on volunteering? My wife, who's not so much a model railroad enthusiast, should like to participate in some form. So I had corresponded with Cliff a bit, and he said he'd get back to me, but no update from him. So just curious as to what she might be able to
Yeah,
do.
I know they still need some help. Send an email to me and I'll forward it to Denny.
Okay.
Okay.
And I can find your email.
Simple. Yeah.
We'll put it in the chat. If
Okay.
you don't know how to get to the chat, click on the chat button below, and
Right.
Frank will put it in the chat. That's the easy way to share it.
I'll put it in there now.
Yeah.
Thanks, Frank.
Cool. So anyway, I just, once again, these are the clinics that are available. Like I said, there may be a couple of new ones that aren't there, but there's a lot of, I was looking through this, a lot of interesting clinics, interesting topics. These are the layout tours. I went through and looked at them again. I found some that were really interesting. If you look at the layouts, they're going to be available to tour. There are a number of layouts. The brilliance is you're not being charged to go look at the layouts. The National Convention, I was surprised, is charging for driving tours to go see layouts. So we're still here in California making those free. There are 3 operating sessions you can sign up for if you're interested. And then, of course, there's the usual extras of polo shirts and cars. And this is the convention hotel. It's not terribly inexpensive. I think it's It's about 139 or 159 a night. So it's not terribly inexpensive, but it is California. So the next thing I just wanted to talk, any other thoughts, questions on the auction or on the convention?
When will those of us that volunteered for the auction, hear about training and planning for the auction?
That's the next discussion I'm going to get into. By the way, I'm going to start after this meeting. I'm going to get on the groups.io and start a chat on there of Coast members that are going to the convention, so we can basically figure out if people are going and make some connections before the convention. Do a little bit of social networking. Let me talk real quickly about the auction. So the auction is scheduled for May 22nd. It's going to be at the Elks, where we've had it in the past, in Alameda. We should be past COVID. I put in the same chart for Alameda County, and you can see Alameda County is more cases, but of course the population is a couple of million. So relatively, it's actually the same kind of numbers as percentage of the population. It's, relatively low. If you meet 100 people, the probability somebody, take 100 people at random in Alameda, the probability that one of them has COVID is actually fairly low, very low. So I think we're going to be, if we extend this line out, I think we're going to be in pretty good shape. The auction committee has gotten together, and what we did, and we're trying to do this throughout the coast, is trying to create data repositories for information. So for example, David's doing this for clinics, identifying people who can do clinics, developing a database so that as volunteers change, as roles change in the organization, that data doesn't go away. It stays in a location. We've done the same thing on the auction. What we did is Bob and I sat down and spent a lot of time going through the process, and we've documented that process in a document. It's available if anybody wants to read it. It basically defines the process, what happens, and defines all the roles of the individuals. So what you notice is that we've defined all the roles here. We defined kind of how they work in the auction. One of the things we've also done is taken each of those roles and basically done a little write-up of what the role entails. The last thing we've done, and this is probably the most important, we're going to get together next week, and this is really what we need to fill out. These are the volunteers. I didn't put any names in here. We do have some names, but if you volunteered in the past for the auction, please contact, if you're in the what's kind of called the back office side of things, which is these computer teardown things here and the reconciliation desk. If you have done one of those roles in the past and are willing to do it again, please send Jer Ingram an email, because we want to make sure we get names in here over the next week or two. The auctioneers, Craig actually has responsibility for that. What we're going to talk about on Monday is getting folks together and doing any necessary training for any of the roles, because we do have the challenge with this is the people that did the auction for years had done it for years, and everybody knew exactly what to do. Because of Bob clearly wanting to move out of being in the role of driving the auction back office, some members that are no longer with us, we really have a change in potential people in the auction. So that's twofold. We need to identify who folks are versus in the past. It was that this person does that every auction. We need to identify that, and we also need to, for folks that are in new roles, do some training. So we're going to talk about that on Monday and talk about the process between now and May 22nd to make that happen. So that's about it from my perspective. Any questions on the auction and the process? By the way, if anyone's interested in volunteering, send me an email. I'll put Jer's email in the chat as well after I stop talking. If one of the roles, if you're interested in one of the roles, basically some of these roles, the early roles are just putting the tables up and tearing them down to set the room up. We have the registration desk. I think that's probably covered. Item check-in, there's a pre-sort in place. This is someone who takes the items and gets them on the table and gets them positioned right before the auction. Then during the auction, there are roles getting items to the auction desk. So this is taking them off the tables, getting them over to the auctioneers. Then there's our computer and manual data entry, one position entering data into the computer, one position entering the data. So this is the bid amount, and the winning bidder gets entered on the card during the auction. Then we've got the auctioneer positions. Then we've got, this is a movement position of moving items to the reconciliation desk. And Jerry Ingram was doing this role, the reconciliation desk. That's where you basically manage the payments, et cetera. And then there's kind of a continued items movement at the end to the final table. So in all, there are about 18 different roles. Now, somebody can do multiple, but one of the things that's clear is we need a significant number of volunteers. So like I said, if you volunteered in the past, send Jerry an email and say, hey, this is the role I did. If you need this information, you can send it to me. If you like to volunteer and there's something you'd like to do, if you'd prefer to sit in the computer entry and the manual data entry are basically sitting jobs. The items to auction desk, reconciliation desk, items movement, those are jobs that are moving items through the process. So you'd be up and moving around. I have not talked to Craig, and we'll find out on Monday if we need a third auctioneer. I think I know we have two. David's going to be one. I think there's maybe a need for a third, but we'll identify that. I will probably send out a separate extra email with a list of the volunteer positions we need, because I quite frankly, I'm really uncomfortable personally not knowing exactly who's going to have what roles when we get there, because if we don't have that defined, the auction may not come off cleanly. So anyway, enough said. I will shut up and let us go to having a more general sharing session.
Phil, I have an item that might be of interest to people.
Excellent. Go for it.
This is something I mentioned a couple of meetings ago, and it's a way to get track power into rail cars. Let me go through let me first of all show you the finished product of how this is done. See if I can get this in focus in the camera. Is this coming through?
Yeah.
All right, what this is an Intermountain Wheel Set.
Can I make a suggestion that you turn off your background blur? Because I think that's blurring it more. I think if you turn off the background blur, that background blur is trying to figure out whether that wheel set is part of your face or not. And it's a challenge for it.
Let's see I'm at this.
If you click on the little up arrow next to where it says stop video, next to stop video, click on that up arrow and it says choose virtual background.
Yeah.
And click on choose virtual and click. There you go. Now we should be able to see it much better.
All right. So what this is an Intermountain Wheel Set with a little copper sleeve that just slides over the axle.
Khakis rather than jeans to the program today?
Or probably good, yeah.
And one of the wheels is insulated from the axle. The other picks up track power. And there's a fiber washer that I put in there to ensure that the little copper sleeve only contacts the live wheel and not the insulated wheel. That prevents any shorts from happening. This is free to slide back and forth on the axle. It just floats, and it's basically self-cleaning. As you run, this thing continues to polish the axle. The thing is to avoid, of course, any sort of grease or anything in there. The wire itself is kind of interesting. This is a super flexible wire. It's almost like it's got no resistance at all. I mean, it's like a piece of string. It's, I think, 24 gauge, and it's tiny and it carries current effectively, certainly enough current for what we're doing. And it is...
Looks like it's silicon, right?
Yeah, I think so. This is the company There you go. Got that in focus. It's hard to see. Anyway, if you want, I can post this information on chat so you can see what this is. But I wish I could get it focused better, but I can't. There it is.
Are you going to do another wheel set in the near future?
Yeah, I am.
If you do, why don't you take pictures of the process? And
Okay.
we'll just schedule like a 10-minute, just go through, because you got to take the wheel sets off, put it on, solder it, and just kind of
Yeah.
might for folks who, one of the things I'm all kind of, and I don't know about the group here, but one of the things I've always thought is we have members who just have never done that.
Yeah.
How do you take the wheel set off? How do you get wheels off the wheel set? How do you put this on? How do you put it back together? I think just going through that for folks who've never done it, it can be a bit intimidating. Just the starting on this. Oh, you can pull wheels off axles. Well, how do you get them recentered on the axle and get your, your wheel spacing right, et cetera, when you do that? Because that's part of the process. That'd be great.
Yeah. The Intermountain Wheel Set is nice because it is self-centering. The axle itself is stepped down. It has a shoulder that the wheel actually lands up against, and this ensures the proper gauge, but it never hurts to check.
Well, and that's a really good point, because if you have those axles, you get that benefit. If you've got an axle that doesn't have a shoulder like that, then you're going to have a different, that's the kind of thing that's great to bring up.
Yeah.
For example, if you're going to do this, you might want to pick those axles because they're easier to do it with.
Yeah.
Yeah. Cool. That's great.
Okay. Right.
And see now we just triggered David, and then David's going to come harass you, Al. That's good. That's great. Nice, quiet.
Well, just a quick note. If anybody's looking for a roommate, Bill Scott is too, for the convention.
That's a good point. Probably also, that's probably not a bad also thing to put up on the groups.io.
I have another item that might be helpful. I don't know. I have boxes and boxes of small parts, odds and ends, pieces of kits. And I'm having a hell of a time trying to organize these things into some sort of a cohesive, system. If anybody has any ideas, it would be nice to hear them.
The only thing I can suggest is I've bought those boxes they have at Harbor Freight that are the plastic, they're about this thick, about this by so, and they have like 4 trays in, and they've got dividers you can put in between, and they work pretty good for longer, thinner, and smaller parts. They don't work very good for like wall sheets and that kind of thing.
Mm-hmm.
But they work really good because you can set the dividers to change the length. So they're about, each tray is about this wide going this way,
Yeah.
but then they're this long overall, or you can put dividers in between for the length of things. I have a few of those. I've used those for figures and a few small parts. I think they're, I used to get a 20% off coupon at Harbor Freight, and they were more reasonable, but they're, I think, $2 or $3 or $4 or something like that at Harbor Freight. That's the only thing I've done.
Phil, can you post the meeting ID for this meeting?
Certainly.
If you throw it in chat, I'm trying to get my iPad up so I can share my junk.
That's pretty problematic, sharing your junk.
No comment. This is the wrong crowd anyway.
Okay, so it should be up there. It's kind of the whole thing you got, but it's got the Zoom meeting down in it there.
I see it. Okay.
Okay, so I'm going to share a kind of a great moment in post-pandemic history. This was, this is the California Central Coast ON30 group, which I'm part of. We set up last weekend at the Hiller Museum. And that was great. That was the first public setup we've done as a modular group since, in a public space, not in a member's location, since I think Just Trains in 2019. So it was kind of cool. We got to set up under Orville Wright's plane there, and we actually had a little table set up with Orville kind of looking down at us. It was quite cool. And then I had one thing. This is kind of interesting. I wanted you guys to look at this model because I thought this was an impressive and incredibly well done model. Just look at the detailing on the roof on the rust. And then of course, as you start to look at it, you realize that that yellow on the right doesn't look like much of a model. It actually looks like a wall of a hotel. This is actually a full-size building at the Gaylord Hotel in Orlando. And I was walking back to my room. I was at a convention there a couple of weeks ago. I was walking back to my room, and I'm on a walkway that's about 20 feet above the concrete where this building is located, looking down at the building. And it just impressed me so much that this is a one-to-one model built using all the techniques we apply when we build models. I mean, you kind of look at how the wood has been distressed in the chair here. Look at how they've done the different colored wood on the wall boards. And then of course, look at the roof, which has obviously been stained to look like rust. I mean, what's really interesting is these guys are essentially building full-size weathered models using the same techniques we do, but applying them at one-on-one. So the dead giveaway, it's not a model, is probably the extension cord here running underneath and along. Though that, depending on your era, could be an interesting feature in a model in the next model you build. So I just thought that was kind of cool to see in full size that they created it in this view and angle. Makes it look just really like a model.
What was the purpose of this building, Phil?
They just have, so this is these Gaylords. I don't know if you've ever been in one of them. Basically what they do is they build a hotel in kind of a circle. And then in the hotels are 4 stories, 5 stories high. And they're basically 2 rooms, one on either side wide. And then in between in the center, they cover it with a glass dome. And so that whole interior is covered and air conditioned. And this building is in there, and there's an area there where there's a steakhouse, and it's kind of a Cajun theme, alligator Cajun theme. And that building is part of that thematic. And it just looks like it's a building that doesn't have any real commercial purpose. It's just kind of there.
So, but being one-to-one, can you actually go into the building?
Yeah. Oh, yeah. You can. Yeah. Hang on. Let me go
Notice the power cord with the yellow and black safety stripe along one side of the building.
I'm having interesting issues with my photo viewer here. It seems to decide it doesn't want to bring the pictures up all the time. There we go. Okay, now I've got it back up. So yeah, you can walk down in here. There's kind of this looks like a ticket booth for something that they can probably use this for some sort of events or something, but it's open to the public. You can just walk in here and sit down and have a cup of coffee, I guess. And they do a lot of events at this place, so they may use this for certain kind of events. I don't know. But it's just, and in fact, the buildings on the other side are very similar. The larger buildings where the steakhouse is, they've done the same. They're all built, they all are built and look like they were built by a modeler modeling, some Southern Cajun area in the 19 thing, kind of that old backwoods look. And I just thought it was very interesting to see that, it applies in one-on-one scale, and the little signs that they made and etc. So
Yeah, really neat.
anyway, One of those things I walked along and saw it, I decided I had to take a picture and share it because I thought it was pretty cool.
Phil, may I share something now?
You absolutely may, and it's open to share. Open for anyone.
Okay, let's see here. Got that there. And now I go desktop, share. This, does everybody see a picture of a little skinny railroad?
Yep.
Uh-huh.
This is my progress on backdrop. And this is the first time I've ever painted a backdrop or weathered a backdrop. And so please forgive if it doesn't look very good yet. I've got a lot of learning to do. The two mountain ranges, I bought some dark gray colored paper at a paper shop, heavy paper. And the back, actually light gray. The one in the back, the mountains, if you will, the mountains further in the distance are hazy. The mountains closer in distance, I took some of my artist pastels that I weather my cars with, and I weathered the paper to have it be darker. And this garage wall has a bunch of electrical conduit and outlets that are behind the railroad and just above the railroad. So to hide it, I took foam core board sections, drilled holes in the very back edge and put bamboo skewers, and then stuck the foam core board onto the skewers to hold it up in front of the power cords and stuff and conduit. And then painted, and as you can see, my painting is crappy. I've got a lot to learn, but the idea is to have, this is a backdrop of trees, and now industrial fencing and structures and stuff will be going up in front of this attempt at a backdrop. So that's where I'm at. I've got to put more concrete down where you see the trucks on the left and so on, but I've been working off and on the backdrop, and so that's where I'm at with that work. And the horrible shadow on the right is part of the garage door guide rail, and I'm going to have to move the light on that side to move it on the other side of the guardrail to get rid of that shadow, because I thought it would be okay, but looking at it, it won't. It just doesn't work. So that's my layout progress. Hasn't been much lately due to illness and this, that, and the other. I have a feeling what we were just shown about putting a copper tube over a wheel set axle is, let's see now, is my picture up? Let me unshare. And Phil, can you put a spotlight on my iPad here?
I already have.
Thank you. This is a very expensive way to do what Al is doing, and I'm going to have to try Al's method here. I think this is by Tangent Scale Models. It's a caboose truck with power pickup. And I just experimented with it and stuffed one of them underneath this little Overton car, and using some of the same sort of wire Al has, except I think mine's a little thicker gauge and Al's thinner gauge would work better. But it goes off of the two electrical contacts on the top of the truck through a couple of holes in the body. And this is one of the that little circuit board is a little switching power supply. A bridge rectifier takes the DCC, turns it into DC to power the power supply, and then that's going to power a couple of tiny light-emitting diodes to put some light inside this Overton car. I've got an interior and stuff. My grandnieces really loved my Christmas train last Christmas, and I'm going to add more cars and light them and put a Santa on the observation deck, and just for the kids. I haven't been doing that much modeling wise just because I've been so sick, but hopefully in the coming couple of months I can get my momentum going again. Okay, who else has something to share?
I've got something if you don't mind.
Go for it.
Okay. Let's see here. If we could,
Okay, Larry, you got to have something. What
yeah.
you been working on?
Okay. So I'm trying to see.
You want to share your screen?
Well, I was trying to use my iPad the way that David was doing, but I don't even see I'm up there. So I'll just hold it up. Okay. So I've got over the 40 years, I basically have accumulated several Athearn dummy locomotives. Pretty much they don't have anything in them. So, and I'm gonna hold up this one. And let me see if I can see what I'm doing here. There we go. All right, so this is a Sp40 T2 Rio Grande. It's probably about 40 years old or so. And what I wanted to do with it was to basically bring it alive. And that is to put some lights in it and to put some sound into it. And in doing so, I tried some method to do that. Now, the chassis itself, you can see here is that it basically has the same truck housing that a powered unit has, except there are no gears in it. And it's not connected to a drivetrain. Well, first of all, this thing has plastic wheels. So you can't pick up anything with plastic wheels. But luckily, Athearn sells these replacements, which are made of metal and have a gear in the center of them. And so what I did was I pulled out all of the plastic wheels and replaced them all with these metal wheels. And these come in two sizes, 40-inch and 42-inch. So I had to take a capillary and try to figure out what size wheels I was replacing. And basically, what I did was I went out to Scale Sound Systems and I bought two speakers, two sugar cube speakers, and that's these big giant housings on each side here. And they're mounted onto the unit basically with something called Uhu Tac Pro Power. This guy here, and it's a tacky substance which I put into a groove that's built into the chassis, and I basically just stuck the speakers right on top of it. Now, to get the sound to them, I purchased a Digitrax DH165A0 decoder right here, and it's just a mobile decoder. However, it also has an associated component which is sold separately called a SoundBug SX006, which basically screws into it right about here. And so I wired it up, and like I said, because the trucks themselves are the same as a powered locomotive, I basically soldered wires onto the appropriate areas on the trucks on both sides, wired them up into the decoder, put in some lights, and the lights, I like using these connectors because I like not having to deal with the body at the same time. And then I've also, this thing came with its own, the SX006 came with its own speaker. So I basically cut that out and hooked up the two bigger speakers in series. And so I tried it out last weekend on my club's layout, and I had a little trouble. But eventually one of the club members figured out that my volume was too low. So we pumped up the volume, and these are 1 watt speakers, and this decoder puts out 1 watt. So we bumped up the power onto the speakers, and it sounds real good. And then not only that too, but I also have front and rear headlights now out of this thing, out of the body shell itself. So basically, just working on this, I brought my dummy locomotive now to some semblance of living. And I like using it like a DPU unit. I'll stick it on the end of the train. and it's not pushing or pulling, it's just being pulled along, but it sounds like a locomotive. So it works real well. So it's my first time to do this, and I'm quite surprised that I actually got it to work.
Well done. That's a nice job.
Thank you. I got more dummy units to work on now.
The one thing is nice is you can usually buy dummy units at, swap meets and stuff for nothing.
Mhm.
And so that's a great starting point for having more capable sound since you don't have to work around the motor and the gear train.
No, and I was worried. That was one of the things I was worried about, was the fact that I have no motor in here. Would it even work without having a connection to a motor? Well, apparently in this case it does.
Yeah, it's
The only downside is for those decoders that use back EMF to drive the way the sound part of the decoder works, you would lose that. Right. So like the soundtracks, diesel decoders, when other decoders, you can set them up so that as they go uphill and the current demand of the motor goes up, they actually measure that and they increase the engine sound, and that'd be the only disadvantage. I mean, the advantage of having a lead unit that's not powered and has sound and maybe has a video camera in it is a really cool option. The downside is that whole thing about the sound reacting to the load level on the motor.
Well, at the club, we use the Digitrax controllers, and so I have one, my real locomotive on one of the knobs, and I have the dummy unit on the other knob.
Yeah.
So when I power up, when I start moving the train, I can actually select the dummy unit and kind of rack up its,
right.
And it actually, the sound does increase. So it did work that way, but yeah, you're right. You have to manually do it.
Cool.
I'll be doing sort of the other half of what Larry has done here. I volunteered to do a presentation at the auction in the morning, Phil, right at 10 o'clock, I think. I'll be bringing in a bunch of my Athearn Blue Box locomotives that I have converted to DCC. Some folks that expressed an interest in seeing my way of doing it, right or wrong. So that'll sort of match with what Larry's doing, because I've got also a bunch of Blue Box tunnel motors that I have switched over to DCC after many years. So sort of same sort of thing as you, Larry. They date way back, but I like the Blue Box because they're just good, reliable pullers. So that's my 5 cents on that. But anybody else have something they'd like to share today?
So I actually have an interesting process that I'm doing. I decided the building this warehouse, and the warehouse is supposed to be on Moss Landing, and it's supposed to be kind of on the railroad that was created by Spreckles, and Spreckles shipped raw sugar from there in the valley and the area there around in Santa Cruz. They shipped it up to San Francisco, and part of the thought process here is, well, there's a warehouse, and the warehouse was used to ship sugar because they did it by boat to avoid the fees of the Southern Pacific, et cetera, et cetera. So that kind of meant the warehouse had to have some reasonable facsimile of shipping sugar. So I figured I had to have a stack of sugar bags, and I went and looked online, and turns out what's interesting about sugar stacks is they stack them about 15, 20 feet high. Warehouse isn't that high. I decided to do them about 7 feet. So what I decided was I needed a whole bunch of bags. So I showed you guys, I think before, I took the Grant Line bags and made up a mold, and I've been printing lots of sacks, and then trying to paint the sacks, and then after they've been painted, trying to color them. And I'm going to try switching to this other camera and see if that works for this better. So let me do this. So what I've been doing is trying to identify the colors. So these were kind of putting paint on, paint on them, and craft paint. And then these are actually done here with some leather-based stains, alcohol stains. Can't really see them that well, but I'm trying to get a little color in to that gray. But then the real problem came if you want to build a block of sugar bags, you're going to have the sides where you have stacks. So what I'm trying to do now is this is actually a stack. You can kind of see it from the side. And what I do is I fill the back in part way through. So when you do the silicon, it won't go all the way through. So the intent is with this, I can cast sides, and then I'm going to put those up like this. And so if you kind of think about this being on one side, then what I've done is I've made up, well, drop it on the floor. I've made up these 3D, and there's going to be a box with 3D printed pieces that's going to go right up against that. And then the top layer will be individual bags on top of that. So the idea is I can create about a 4 by 3 inch area of sacks and kind of cover it on the outside with sacks so it looks really realistic. So I'm doing an awful lot of making resin printed sacks and trying to get them out. But hopefully I'm going to get it somewhat done by the convention. This is the
2 1/4 pound. Right?
I've got to actually do this one. This is my today. I had to let the this is air dry modeler's clay. This is going to go in here, and then I'm going to pour this as a silicon mold, so I can basically mold about 3 and 4 more of these to do the sidewalls. So kind of an interesting process. Never have done this before, trying to figure out how to make this stuff work. So any thoughts on coloring stacks would be very interesting. I've done them with just basically sprayed with the typical rattle can spray as a first coat, and then was basically washing them with now inks and alcohol to try to get a little bit of contrasting color on them, and trying to make them, my assumption is they're kind of more brownish because they're not really, it's not processed sugar, it's raw sugar. And my assumption is that would be probably moved in pretty basic sacks back in the late teens, early 20s.
It would have to be a fine weave cloth, Phil, if is this granulated sugar?
But it's raw sugar, so it's fair, it's raw sugar is more bigger crystals.
So, but burlap probably would be a little too coarse of a weave for that, right?
Right, it'd probably be something, but I guess my point is it's not something that's necessarily bleached white. Like you see sugar, processed sugar that's white tends to be in bleached white bags. This is more the industrial process shipping. And of course, I'm not sure the problem with this is there's no great documentation on the color of a sack circa 1920.
That means you can fake it.
Exactly. So so any thoughts on how to add color contrast? Like I said, I tried acrylic. I tried the Vallejo paints with some water. Didn't try that with alcohol. Then I tried alcohol wash solutions with colored with shoe dye, and those look to me to be a little better in terms of the color. I'm trying to create a kind of a little bit lighter color because I've got a darker wood floor, so I get a little bit of contrast there, so it's not all kind of the same shade. But yeah, any thoughts there on coloring things like that would be interesting.
Phil, what kind of color are you shooting for? Are you looking for something that looks like burlap? Because that would seem to be the right kind of color, because to get white, you would have to bleach it. So it's not going to be white.
Yeah, so that was what I was doing, was I was starting with this kind of earth tone, this color here, you can kind of see on these guys, that's kind of the color I shot as the base color. And then what I was doing was putting basically different kinds of browns on top of that. Right. So, had the, lighter browns, darker browns, and depending on the brown, it comes out either more yellow or more red. And then the one I think I like the best, kind of all of them, is the medium brown, which is kind of. Hang on, let me switch my camera back here. Which is kind of this one, I think, in the middle right here. These pieces right here. These ones, these three right here in the middle. Where these were medium brown, these over here were darker brown and red and mahogany. This was light brown over here, I think, and these were like beige and some other colors. I just, as part of this process, got done taking all of my shoe dyes and mixing them up in mason jars with a quarter of a cup of alcohol and 2 shots of color to try to create a common base for coloring. The thing that's interesting about that is it's pretty inexpensive to buy those bottles of the shoe dye from Amazon, and then you got to figure out how to mix them and make the colors you want.
Bill, the
Yes,
thing
sir.
is, this stack is not stored outdoors, right?
No.
So remember this too. The lighting that is present on those is going to shift something also. So if you're really worried about the color, you should be examining your colors under the lighting you intend to apply to those things.
Mm-hmm.
Yep. Well, and the lighting is LEDs that are on the. Yep. So you're
Yeah,
right. I
just
should power up
if
one of those LEDs and take a shot on it with that. That's a good idea, because
well,
it turns out the stack's only going to be, the LEDs. The walls are, I think, 14 feet tall, and then the LEDs hang down from that because they have a shade on them. So they're probably at 12 feet, and the stack is going to be probably 6 feet tall. So they're only, 6 feet away, the lighting. So the lighting will be right on the top of the stack there. And by the way, the other thing that I am finding is that I went through, I think I talked about this process of putting the resin molds and the vacuum chamber and running them. And I did that last night with some, and they came out amazingly. I'm just not getting any air bubbles at all. So it's actually a really good way of doing those small castings. So,
Bill,
yes, sir.
the color you want would be a very, very light gray for the cotton cloth. But what happens is that the raw sugar's got molasses on it.
Yep.
And that's going to saturate the sack. And the molasses will gravitate towards the bottom of the sack. So you'll get a very light khaki color on the top and a little bit more darker towards the bottom of the sack as it sits, depending on how long it's sitting.
Well, so that kind of says probably that those colors I was looking at for the top are probably not that bad. They look reasonable to me. So, because I've shot like I said, I've shot the color of the base color is a thing called Castle Rock or Castle something and it's one of those, the plastic handled spray cans, the fancier spray cans.
Yeah.
And it's a matte, and I think it's called Castle Rock. So it's kind of a grayish tone. And I think that works pretty well. It's not the darker gray of a primer. And cool. I think I'm on the right track then, it sounds like.
Yeah, that sounds pretty cool for what you want. But no, I was involved quite often with the raw sugar out of Hawaii.
Yep.
Which I think should be the very similar product.
It's the same.
Even
It's
if
exactly
it is cane versus beet.
It was exactly the same process. That from a process perspective, the same thing. They did the raw sugar production in Hawaii. They did the raw sugar production down in Santa Cruz, Monterey. Yep. And then they shipped the raw sugar from there, and it wasn't shipped in bins. It was shipped in sacks because that's still how they did stuff. And they shipped it from there up to the refinery up, in Parquinas or wherever it was up there. And so the idea is They didn't do a lot of this because they actually didn't have a building with a pier, in the bay. They actually had a pier that stuck out into the ocean, but that was part of why they did that, was the idea of being able to ship around the Southern Pacific. Apparently, to get the raw sugar from there to Carquinez, the SP rates were quite exorbitant, so to speak.
Yeah, well, there was a lot of transferring and changing the lines to
Yep.
get there.
Yeah, exactly. And so the idea that you can just take it directly down, have it, and the idea with the warehouse is you would fill the warehouse up, you would have cars parked there with sugar in them ready to be unloaded on the dock and on the siding at the warehouse, with the idea that you can load all that sugar onto a ship. Because it's an interesting thought process, right? The number of rail cars it takes to put stuff in a warehouse and the number of rail cars and warehouse contents it takes to fill a ship is pretty interesting. That you're basically building up at the warehouse location enough volume so when a ship shows up you can rapidly load it.
Well,
So,
the ships that they were using then were fairly small.
Yep.
And it wouldn't take more than 10 or 15 boxcars to totally fill the thing.
exactly, and that's kind of what I'm looking at. Is you can get four box cars potentially on the sidings on the dock, and there are
Yeah.
2 on the back, and so that's 6. And then what's in the warehouse, and then maybe doing a swap of some of the cars, you can get up to that 15 box cars to fill fill one of those little coastal freighters up.
Yep.
And of course, it gives me the option of at some point building a freighter and having a kind of add-on module that puts the freighter next to the dock. But that's a long-term prospect that may or may not ever happen.
Yeah, you're going to do a semi-sail schooner.
Yep. So anyway, that's the project. Trying to get that done for the convention. I have better pictures of it.
Yeah, just do it when you're looking at your painting. You'll get more brown on the bottom than the top.
Yeah.
As the socks sit.
That will be the challenge. Come back and do a little touch up on the bottom of them, maybe to try to.
Yeah, but raw sugar is an interesting critter. What's nice is in the freighter's hold, it would start to ferment. And after about 4 days, you could put a bucket under the vent and gather rum.
So basically what you're saying is the crews bringing the sugar over were, by the time they got to California, they were happy.
You're happy, yeah.
That's good. That's good.
Can I show a model?
You certainly may, Bruce. Go for it.
Okay, this is an old hometown, Wabash Valley hometown kit. Hopefully I don't drop it. It's a pickle plant.
Oh, that's very nice.
Yeah.
And I think the truck was made by Walker. Try to hold it more still. Now it's hard to see the detail, but to simulate the pickles in those tubs, I painted some coffee grounds green. That's interesting that is the lettering backwards, shows backwards on the car. Not sure why that is.
It's actually, we're not seeing it backwards. It turns out Zoom in their normal configuration, they show you a reversed image.
Oh,
And the reason they do it is if your image is reversed when you move your hand like this, it looks like it looks when you look in a mirror. If it's
uh-huh.
not reversed, it moves the opposite direction. It turns out that really confuses people's brains. You're
Oh,
used to seeing yourself reversed in a mirror, so they show you reversed like you're looking in a mirror. We're seeing it normal, but you're seeing it reversed just to not confuse your brain.
If we have any brains.
well, as
By,
bone,
well,
as
by the
bone, go ahead.
by the way, you can turn that off if you want in Zoom. If you click there, you can turn that off on the video settings, and you can actually see what it's like when it's normal.
Oh,
Looks really cool. That's a really neat.
Yeah.
what
But-
is the, where you turn it off, what is that labeled? What's the label on the feature to turn that off? Do you know?
Hang on. If you go in video settings,
Okay,
if you click on the up arrow next to the stop video and click on video settings, you'll see in there it says down a ways it says my video and it says mirror my video. Just unclick that and it won't be mirrored.
got it. So anyhow,
Very nice.
I was pretty enamored with some of the old obsolete hometown kits that I view as the precursor to many of the high-end kits we subsequently saw, like South River Model Works and Fine Scale Miniatures. And anyhow, thanks for the opportunity to show it.
Is the VAT car built up from a kit?
Yes.
That's a nice looking car. A lot of interesting detail to it.
Yeah, I don't think I bought it. I think I bought that at a show. But, you know, cars like that, vinegar cars and pickle cars and all the cars you don't see anymore always intrigued me. So when I saw them at shows, I'd always snap them up. I remember seeing a vinegar car out east that I thought was kind of cool. If you give me a minute, let me get a picture of it. I'll pull it off the wall. Can't remember where I saw it, whether it was Allentown or where, but it was on display. It's the only one I've ever seen, prototype that is, that's was ever
It's a wood
displayed.
tank, isn't it?
What's that?
That's a wood tank, isn't it? A wooden tank?
Yes, it is. It's wood.
I mean, the interesting thing are those bars that run from the center up to the ends that must be there for kind of stress on the ends. Looks like there's a crossbar on the end that holds the end plates on, and then there are kind of tie rods that go back to the center to tie it all together.
Correct.
Interesting.
Let me get one more picture off the wall I took of that. Hold on, please. This was a sign on the car. I don't know if you'll be able to read that text, but let me see. I can hold it still enough.
Probably not. I don't think we can focus on it.
All right, let me read it to see. Titan hoops with the nut tie rods and with the turnbuckles. Hoops and tie rods on this tank must be kept tight Do not use wedges under hoops. And then let's see, periodic inspection and tightening will prevent leaking. So anyhow, that's it.
Cool.
Precautions for the care and feeding of wooden tanks. The people that don't know.
Well, I think we probably reached a pretty good point for today, kind of a short get together, but that's cool. We won't be having a get together in 2 weeks because we'll be at the convention. I thought about trying to do something from the convention, but decided that probably just wasn't going to work that well. And for folks that were there, they wouldn't want to participate. So hopefully we'll see everyone at the convention. And if there's nothing else, I guess we will call it a morning.
Yeah. See you, Phil.
Cool. Well, everybody have a great week, and hopefully we'll see you at the convention in 2 weeks, if not back here in 4.
Can you hear me, Phil?
Yes. Go ahead, David.
I don't know if you were going to put up any listing of people interested in carpooling. I'm looking at going up from the East Bay for the convention, and if folks were interested in carpooling, they should let me know.
I was thinking we could, is everyone on groups.io? Is anybody not on groups.io? Because I think the thing to do is to start 2 kind of threads on groups.io about that. One about carpooling to the convention and one about getting together at the convention, either for layout tours or just generally. But let me go ahead and start that up on the groups.io. I'll do that right after this. I mean, I've got it actually open already on my computer, so I'll jump up there on groups.io and set up those 2 on the PCR site.
You may want to set up a third one for room shares.
Okay, that sounds good. Yep. Yeah, just to play. I think that's the best place to drive discussions, because it gets, kind of everybody's there. I tried to do a coast one, but the PCR ones is almost a coast one. I think half the people on there are probably coast people anyway on the groups.io. So I will probably send an email out next week about not having a meeting, and I'll probably include a link to that if anybody's going to check up there.
Is that called groups.io .PCR?
So you go, so the way it works is you go here, hang on, let me let me share my screen here. This is what it looks like. So this is groups.io, and this is the PCR NMRA. So the way you do this is you go to groups.io and you register and get an account.
Phil, we're seeing a spreadsheet.
Oh, hang on, I shared the wrong screen.
Yeah, this is Yahoo you're talking about, correct?
No, it's it's kind of the replacement to Yahoo. Groups.io is not Yahoo. It was some people that started a group site separate from Yahoo. But this is the NMRA groups.io page. So the way it works is you go to groups.io right up here and you register as a user. It's free.
Still seeing the spreadsheet.
Why are you still seeing? There we go. Now you should be seeing this.
Nope.
So now you're seeing groups.io.
No.
No,
we aren't, Phil.
Nope. It says you started screen sharing. That's all I see.
Oh, hang on. I may end up
While
as
Phil's doing that, you want to look for capital letters PCR-NMRA at groups.io.
okay. I think I'm back. Am I back?
Yeah,
You're back.
Yeah, it augured in for some reason. It's did that once to me before. I don't know what the problem was. Okay, so now you should be able to see a spreadsheet,
Nope.
right?
Oh,
There we
Okay,
go.
There we go.
oh.
Hey, you lost it.
Okay. And now it should. I'm going to give you a second, make sure everybody sees this.
Yeah.
So this is groups.io. So all it is groups.io. And when you go there, you'll just sign in with your email and you'll open an account with your email. And when you do, up here at the top, you'll notice where it says search here. And if you search here if you just search on PCR NMRA, it will bring up this PCR NMRA group. Now, it took me right into it because I'm already there. But if you search, you can actually search on it, or when you come in up here, you can find or create a group. So if you find a group here, you can go in and now search. And, so for example, the CCC, let me see. So here's the CCC, and somewhere in here should be the ON30 group, but I'm not seeing it now. Oh, maybe there are more. But that's how you find things. So like if you type in ON30, here's the ON30 conspiracy, and here's a bunch of other ON30 groups. If you put in model railroad operations, you get JMRI users, which is the JMRI group. And then this group here, RIOPS, this is the OPSIG kind of group on groups.io. So, if you look here, here's, intermodal traffic, citrus industry modeling. So there's a whole bunch of groups here. And so again, all you do to find the PCR group is put in PCR NMRA, and that'll bring this group up, which is PCR NMRA. This is the Pacific Coast region. So again, find or create a group and just put in PCR NMRA. And that, if you look in here, there will be messages. When you go to join the group, you'll have to be moderated. So when you apply to join a group, you'll say, I want to join this group. It may say you have to be approved, and that basically there's a moderator who has to approve you. But what will happen is up here, there will be topics like where here, Golden State Model Railroad Museum running trains again. We'll have a topic right here that will be, carpooling to the PCR convention. And so we'll add those in. So I'll put the link in the chat here real quick. So just go to, www.groups. So that's basically just go there and join. It's really is a great place to find, lots of model railroading groups, and what's interesting is you can get a lot of content and information from folks if you ask. On the RIOPS one, I actually get emails from that one, and it's amazing how much discussion there is about car movements and very specifics about cars. So.
Yeah, I've used it for QSI decoder information. It's been very good.
Yep, exactly. It's just it's kind of the kind of very informal social community we have for doing things.
I want to ask David Gibbons if I could give a presentation on May 7th on the Concord Naval Weapons Station Railroad. But if that session will be too dominated by the convention talk, I could move it out further to a different date.
No, that'll be post the convention, and I think that's a great topic. That's why I think everybody. It's very very local and topical. Let's put it that way.
Sure.
So yeah, no, it's
okay.
One of the things, Fran isn't on here today, but Fran has been looking at the locomotives of the powder works up there, and that's been very interesting, and the weapon station would be interesting as well, how they did that. It's such a unique environment.
Okay, that's barring any health problems I've had to deal with. I'm good for that then.
Yeah,
Stay
I got to
healthy,
tell you
Bruce.
this barring health problems, or I had somebody else, I was looking for something on another thing and they sent me an email. I said, well, I'm going to be in France and I'm not sure I can get back. And it was 6 days between. And the idea that you're in France and you can't be sure you can get home 6 days later when you're planning on coming home that day is kind of something we never planned on that in the past. It was never this idea of, well, yeah, I'm sure I can come, but I'm not sure whether I'll be sick or not. In 40 years of doing business, I just never heard that very often. So
Yeah.
our new consciousness.
Anyway, thank you, Bruce. We will be very much looking forward to seeing your presentation on the 7th of May.
Sounds good.
Excellent. Yeah, and in fact, Bruce, if you can maybe do like a 2-sentence write-up and send it. Do you have David's email?
Yes, I think Steve Lane gave it to me.
Cool. I can send you one with his in mind. Yeah, if you can send like just a 2 or 3 sentence write-up about, kind of what you'll cover, because then what I'll do is I'll start putting that in the next Coast Extra, the one that says that we're going to be doing the convention on the 23rd. But what it'll say is, hey, Bruce is going to be doing, Concord Weapons Station on the 7th. Make sure you come. I think one of the challenges, quite frankly, that David's facing is, for those of us who come every Saturday, this is kind of a Saturday social thing, and we talk, getting other people to come who haven't been coming from a social perspective to say, oh, I want to come this time. Doing something like that, Bruce, is great, because there may be 10 or 15 people that haven't been coming that come because of the topic. And then once they come, they say, gee, this could be fun to do. I look at, quite frankly, I look at clinics and layout tours and these things as being a way of getting people to kind of come in and engage a little bit. So, guys, just so you guys understand my kind of underlying pathological pain, which is we have 375 people in the division and there are 10 of us on this video. That for me, what bothers me is I feel like we're not engaging effectively with 350 of our members. And I got to figure out how to do that more effectively going forward.
Phil,
So,
look at it this way. We have a lot of room for growth on the upside.
oh, absolutely. And virtual is not going to get everybody. And, like this morning, the San Leandro Depot is open at 10, and they had to have people there at 9:30 to get set up to open to the public at 10. So, if you notice, nobody from the San Leandro group are here today because they all basically, so I think that's the other thing that the virtual meetups are going to run into is the more physical events we have, the harder it is, the less people will have in certain ones of these. So, and my thought process, by the way, on these was not to cancel them because of an external event, just to keep the schedule, and they just run through it. So, enough said.
You're on mute, Dave.
Still muted.
Muted again. Thanks everybody for coming. I know for one, I'll be looking forward to the presentation on the Naval Weapons Station and the undoubted amount of rail traffic that it had in the past. So thanks again for that. And I'm going to go put an ice pack on my jaw like the doctor told me to do. You guys all be well. I'm going to scoot unless somebody else has something for me.
Get better.
Have a good one, David. Well, I think again with that, I'm going to bid everyone adieu. Have a great week, and we will, unless there's something else specific, we will plan on hopefully seeing folks at the convention or in 2 weeks after that back here.
All right. Take care.
Thank you.
Thanks, guys. Have a great one. Bye now.
Bye-bye.
Bye.